Hello everybody, this is Pyra, and I wanted to give you my thoughts and impressions of Dawntrail so far. So today is July 14th, we are just over 2 weeks since the early access period for Dawntrail, and I took a whole week off, a little over a week off from work and real life obligations to play with the expansion, to go through the entire MSQ, and to go through pretty much all of the major content that was put in the expansion, and I just wanted to give you my thoughts and feedback. So before we get into the video any further, the first half of my video is going to be as spoiler-free as possible. I'm not going to talk about specific MSQ-related things or specific zone-related things, but there will be spoilers in the later section, the main section of this video. I will definitely put up a spoiler kind of countdown, so do be aware of that, and let's get into it. Just a little bit about me. I've been playing the game since patch 2.5, so back since Heavensward in January 2015, I have been playing Final Fantasy XIV. I have enjoyed every expansion at launch, and this was not my first rodeo with an expansion launch. However, I had a lot of thoughts about it, especially after Endwalker's abysmal login queue launch. The first thing that happened was I logged in early access day at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I was ready to sit in a queue for hours, and holy cow, it only took 2 minutes. 2 minutes to get in, and I was instantly blown away. Just all the work that they did with the servers to kind of lead up to that point. I was not expecting that it was going to be that good. I was expecting it a little bit better than Endwalker, but it just felt so much easier to get in the game. Even to relog into the game, I think at maximum, there was one issue where people got DC'd all over the place, and it took me like maybe 15 minutes to get back in. So really, like, right off the bat, we were looking good going into Dawntrail. No issues with login experiences. As soon as I logged in, I had actually logged out in Sea of Clouds because I kind of wanted to see how that area was going to look first. Very nostalgic for me area. And it was beautiful. Like, my reaction to going in the game, I was so blown away with how much the graphics all stacked up. I feel like there was a lot of little changes and improvements. However, put together, it really felt like you got a pair of glasses in the correct prescription. Like, everything just looked a lot more crisp, a lot more vibrant, a lot more clear, and it was really cool starting out the expansion, even just looking at a couple old zones to see the comparison. Like, I knew we were gonna see improvements of the new zones, however, the old zones, like, it was just so nice looking at those and seeing what they looked like through a new lens. And now probably one of the last things that I can talk about before we get into spoiler zone is the job changes and additions. So, I went through the whole story on Black Mage, and I've been a Black Mage main forever. I started the game on Black Mage, and I'm still maining Black Mage 9.5 years later. Overall, I love the Black Mage changes. I'd say overall, because there are some things I really don't like, but mostly I'm really digging the Black Mage changes. The first thing that I really love about it is that we have Mana Font, and it gives you all your MP back. That is, like, one of the coolest things that I can experience. Another thing is, of course, the ley lines, that I can retrace my ley lines somewhere else. Of course, I've been asking for years now, Yoshi P, please let me use my ley lines like a hula hoop so I can bring them with me. And I guess I didn't get that. But retrace is still something that's been super helpful, especially in extreme content. Overall, I think the class has seen a lot of really good changes. However, the one thing that I really haven't vibed with yet, and it's definitely feeling better, is the level 100 ability Flare Star. To me, it feels like it was kind of added because they didn't know what else to put there, and it doesn't feel super smooth in rotation. It might just have to be a practice thing for me, and I just have to, like, play with it more. But so far, it just feels kind of clunky to add into my rotation, and I don't care for it that much. The animation is okay. The potency is okay. It just, I feel like I wish I would have gotten something else or nothing at all, quite honestly, at 100. Besides that, I have heard, and I've experienced only a couple times, if you are in lower level content, getting MP back, say if you accidentally are, killing mobs and your astral falls off, how do you gain back MP? I guess it is, like, really difficult, and I've experienced this sometimes messing up rotations in extremes, like, completely messing up in extremes. Getting MP from having nothing is abysmal. It takes forever, and I believe that might be a change that they're gonna fix in the next patch, but, those are the only two issues I'm having with Black Mage right now, so overall, I'd say, like, 8.5, 9 out of 10 for Black Mage. I'm still really enjoying Black Mage. I'm fairly certain that that is still what I'm going to go in on for the majority of my Savage and Ultimate rating experience. So that first is, has been really great for me going into Dawntrail. I'm really happy that my class wasn't completely obliterated or changed. It was still something very comfortable going through the expansion. Now, right after Black Mage, of course, I played with Sage a bit. Sage feels very intuitively the same as it did in Endwalker for me. I also decided to get Machinist up, which does feel very similar. The one thing I'll have to say with Machinist, though, is it feels super, super weak. Like, I understand that it is Fizz range, and it's not going to compare to, say, the numbers of Black Mage does. However, it feels like even with the newest ability that is, like, super powerful, it just feels weak overall. So I have a very hard time now going into content on Machinist because I know I'm not pulling a good weight, and it's not buying me as much freedom and mobility as I used to. I used to have more mobility issues with Black Mage, and I feel like some of the Black Mage abilities that we got, like Retrace, is really allowing us to have more movement. And Machinist, I used to lean on Machinist to have more movement in fights like Uwu and other, like, ultimate fights, but now I'm like, I don't know if the movement is worth the lack of DPS. So I have kind of seen an issue with that. I do wish that they really look Machinist over again, because for a selfish Fizz range DPS that has little to no utility for the party, it is not pulling the numbers that it should. It really should be having a little higher of a DPS weight class, and it doesn't feel like it. So I was a little disappointed seeing that with Machinist, but the playability on Machinist is still otherwise very good. The last two classes that I wanted to talk about, or at least one of them, is Pictomancer and Viper. Now, these are the brand new classes that came to Dawntrail. I did unlock both at the beginning week of the expansion. However, I have not tried Viper yet, just because I am not a melee person, and Pictomancer was definitely more up my alley of a class I wanted to play, being a caster main, and also being, like, a IRL Pictomancer and an artist. It just looked way more aesthetically pleasing. So far, I did finally get it to level 100 yesterday, a little over 2 weeks in, and I'm enjoying it a lot right now. It has some casts that are longer than, say, Black Mage, but I'd say, like, 85% of its kit is very, like, instant cast or quick casting. So it does very much feel like a Red Mage vibe right now, and until they nerf it a little bit, which they most likely will, it is a very, very powerful class. So it is, if you do it right, it is very powerful. And it is super fun and is super flashy. I still have to figure out optimization. It feels kind of like low barrier to entry, high ceiling type of class, but I'm having fun with it so far. It does definitely break up my normal routine of just doing a couple different classes over and over again. So I am looking much forward to trying to figure out a good rotation, maybe bringing it into some extremes, maybe further than that. And yeah, it has been really fun to pick up and play so far. So that is probably everything that I can say without getting into any spoiler territory, because we still have to talk about the new zones, the new story and quests, and just kind of everything else in specifics to the MSQ. I also want to talk about the world boss fates. Everything that is coming up is very integrated into the Dawntrail MSQ in some way or another. So I would say if you've made it to this point and you don't want any spoilers, thank you so much for watching. But if you are okay with story spoilers, or if you've already gone into and completed the Dawntrail MSQ, then let's talk about that further. Now, next up, first thing that I wanted to talk about in kind of the spoiler zone area is the new regions and zones. Holy cow. These areas are so much better than the older maps, in my opinion. Everything but poor Shaloni Baloney, which kind of disappointed me a little bit, just because it was very lackluster a little bit. But besides that, everything else really blew me away, with not just the refining of details in the graphics that we knew in the game already, but also how much they were able to put into the zones. Yaktel is the one that I'm thinking of specifically, where it is such like a lush forestation kind of everywhere. There's a lot of assets in the map. It feels very much like land, like an actual area, like a existing, living, breathing ecosystem. I absolutely fell in love with these maps. I'm happy to go back through these maps. I feel like even though I've flown around all of them and done all these fates, I still feel like I haven't seen everything in these maps, because they're just so incredibly big and detailed and full of life. It's been really great exploring these new areas. Now, of course, with that being said, I do love the juxtaposition. I will use my art school lingo, the juxtaposition between the first half of the expansion, which was very focused around kind of like a tropical, you know, outdoorsy type of vibe, and then the Solution 9-esque, kind of when we get to Solution 9, when we get to Heritage Found and later. Both of these types of zones were amazing to me. Like I said, the only one that really disappointed me a little bit was Shaloni. I felt like it could have just been more, or maybe if we spent more time there, more impactful time there, I would have felt differently, but it just felt a little meh compared to the rest of the zones. But it was just something that was just really, really nice to look at. I really enjoyed seeing just how lush everything was and how great everything was, and I really loved that cyberpunky aesthetic. So going to Solution 9 was just super great, seeing everything there. Going to Heritage Found, going to Living Memory. Holy cow, I am in love with it. It is just so great, and I really love how the maps were played this time and how just well thought out and detailed each of these maps were. And now I think it really set the stage for the story and questline, which this is probably the meat and potatoes of what most people will probably come to this video for, but the MSQ. So I did the MSQ in 3 days. Three long days I completed the MSQ, and I've seen a lot of controversy online about the MSQ. However, if you want my quick, short, do I like it or not? I enjoyed it. I do really think that Dawntrail was a really good MSQ. I personally think that a lot of people had high expectations for it to surpass or meet the story quality of Shadowbringers or Endwalker. And I said for months previous, like, you're gonna be really disappointed if you think it's going to be that good. And that mindset really helped me enjoy the entirety of the story. Now, I know the first half of the story was definitely slow, right? We are following this new protagonist, and we're learning about their culture before we can really dive into anything critical. And I think that was definitely a different pace than many people are used to. The best way I saw it said, though, was that this is one of the first expansions where we're not the main character. The Warrior of Light is not the main character. And we're not even really, like, as much of the secondary character. We're following somebody else's journey, somebody else's their whole struggle. And so it was, to me, really refreshing going through that and seeing that the turmoils that we were facing were not of our own. And it wasn't like as much pressure to like save the world, which we ended up having to anyways, but it was more relaxed on us and more on somebody else. I do think that this was a good choice that they made. I think it was very appropriate for kind of following up after a 10-year story arc. However, I do understand that it was a polarizing kind of way to write because a lot of people aren't used to that and aren't receptive to that. They really didn't like that. However, for me, I enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. The beginning part was definitely slow. However, I do like it. I thought it was still really good. I was still curious for the next chapter. And once we hit that point in Shaloni where you see this orb and we have to go in and everything is happening, it was like a what the fuck. Like, we started getting into these moments where it's like, okay, here we go. Here it is. Here is the bigger part of the story. It was just, the second half of the story is really what I fell in love with because it was a lot of, you know, like, I like to theory craft while going into MSQ, and I like to kind of like try to guess what's happening next. And so like some of my assumptions were correct, others were like completely not correct, and it was just really good to have some of these like twists and turns at the end that I wasn't expecting. One of the biggest things, too, that I wasn't expecting is to cry. I did not think we were getting any sort of emotional attachment in Dawntrail, and there were a lot more serious moments at the end that I expected, especially when you're in living memory and we start hearing from Graha, like, what would you do if you had one last day with, you know, that loved one or somebody? Like, it was really crazy how in the short kind of like the story, if you consider the story just Dawntrail one expansion by itself, how they really kind of got you attached to certain ideations. I know for me, and I feel like from seeing others' opinions and thoughts about it too, like, they did really good writing in the second half with the whole Alexandria part and the whole living memory and the Solution 9 and all these people, where the topic of death and remembering and like mourning and like everything like that was just like challenge. And so it was really great to see, even, you know, to kind of like feel my own internal feelings of death and loss, and then see everybody else's interpretations of that, because it is a topic that is a heavy topic and everyone interprets it differently. Everybody interprets death differently, loss differently. Hearing that line in particular with Graha was really cool because I've talked to or have seen people's comments on that specific part of the story, and just hearing people relate a certain loved one to that or a certain experience to that. Definitely a little triggering, I think, for some people, which I hate to see that some people were kind of like not okay with that scene. However, like, for me, it was like a moment where I cried, but I really appreciate the storytelling of challenging such a difficult topic, because it's a difficult topic. However, it's something that everyone will have to face at one point in their life. They will have to face death, they will have to face loss, and, you know, it was really good seeing that a serious topic like that was kind of like forged into the story to kind of be a little bit less real, you know what I mean? It is a fantasy game. It's a fantasy world. So of course, you know, we don't have soul banks and soul supplies and everything like that, but, you know, kind of, if we can like relate it to our own experiences and like reflect, I think that is like key story writing. And so I really appreciated how they approached that and how they took the story through that route, but also did it in a tasteful way. So overall, I really, really enjoyed the story. Was it my favorite of all the Final Fantasy XIV narratives? No. Was it my least favorite? Absolutely not either. I thought it was very good, and I thought it met my expectations, if not exceeded some of my expectations for Dawntrail. Definitely had some flaws, but if nothing else, I thought it was a very appropriate way of setting up a bunch of loose threads that we can pick on, and also bringing us through somebody else's narrative, through bringing us through someone else's journey, and also exposing us to potential new things in the future of Final Fantasy XIV, because as we know, Yoshi P is looking to at least the next 10 years of this game. And so just having threads open, like, how do we unlock portals to different areas? Things like that is just... Like, I'm already theory crafting about, you know, is Ishtola gonna take this key that we got and figure out how to get back to the first? Like, I think that they have laid a lot of groundwork for the future, and I really appreciate that that exists because of Dawntrail. And I think that is something that is going to be the best part about Dawntrail's MSQ, is maybe less about it by itself, but how it sets up the next 1, 2, 3, maybe even more future expansions, because of the groundwork that it started laying, and because of, like, some of the threads that it started kind of unraveling. And so, with the story as well, there has been a lot of feedback about very polarizing mixed feedback about Wuk Lamat. I don't want to get super in detail with the characters themselves. However, I do want to give kind of like my 2 cents on Wuk Lamat as a character, as kind of the main leader of this, you know, of the protagonist train that is going through this expansion. I personally really enjoyed her character. Some people thought that there was flaws because of just, like, how she would, like, have some growth and then kind of, like, be scared again. I feel like her character was very realistic. I think that, you know, it was very cute and funny to see, like, someone who's like, yes, I'm gonna do this. I'm scared of planes and trains and boats. Like, just, it was really funny to see that kind of side of her. And not just funny, like, haha, funny, cute, but, like, realistically, I feel like we all have that part of us, right? Like, somebody like me, I feel like I'm pretty fierce and this, but, like, if I see, like, a rodent, I'm going to cry and scream and run away. So, like, I feel like everyone kind of has that side to them where, like, a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of insecurity or something, and, you know, just, like, trying to, like, push through it. I really found it to be feeling kind of genuine, right? Like, we're in this game, and a lot of the characters that we're faced with, even, like, the Warrior of Light ourselves, is very, like, larger than life. We can take on the world. We'll always find our way. You know, everything's always, like, powerful, strong, amazing, like, all these things. And with Wuk Lamat, it felt more... Her character felt more like a human. You know what I mean? Like, it felt very real. Like, I could relate. I could relate. So it was, to me, at least that surface level of her character, I really enjoyed. I felt like it was really cool to see a character that was less hyped up and, like, you know, godlike in this, and more like a person, like, more personable, more that you could, like, physically kind of relate to. I really enjoyed it. I really loved seeing her story arc in there, and it wasn't a linear progression, like, character progression, you know. It had its dips and curves, but I think that's life. I was glad to see it because that's being a human. Nothing is linear. You know, you're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days, you're gonna go back, and then you're gonna go forward, and then forward and back, and then forward and back. But I really honestly enjoyed her. We love Wuk Lamat. She is great. Her voice actress, Senna Breyer, I think did a really good job of making her feel almost person you know kind of vibe. So, like, I personally really enjoyed her character. And now the next thing I wanted to talk about past MSQ is the duties, the dungeons, the trials, etc. They absolutely beefed up the content going into this expansion. Dungeons, which is entry-level content, were way harder than I expected in certain instances. Certain mechanics, I died so many times because it just was a lot different than what we have been used to in the past. I'm very happy with this because dungeons have been for a long time something that I just slowly over time, the more I did hard content, I kind of stopped enjoying dungeons. I stopped doing dungeons. I stopped doing roulettes unless I had a specific idea in mind. And now I'm actually excited to go into the dungeons. Like, I'm actually excited to do my roulettes because they're more fun now. They're more fun. I can see that maybe some people don't like it, but for me, as somebody who does Savage content, who does Ultimate raiding, I really enjoyed going through the dungeons. I thought that they were very well executed. And I'm excited to see where they go from here, because I really hope that they don't let their foot off the gas. I think they're at an appropriate level. Like, I don't want them to necessarily get harder, because I can understand where maybe the player base that doesn't do the harder content, it would be maybe too challenging for them. However, I do feel like it felt more exhilarating to do visually. Fantastic. Just a really good experience. The trials as well kind of beefed it up a little bit. I honestly don't know with the extreme trials if they're harder than the Endwalker ones necessarily. However, I can just say I had way more fun in these trials than I have in extreme trials in the past. I might be a minority with this. I really did not care for the extremes in Endwalker. Outside of the MSQ related trials, didn't love them. Some of them I liked more than others. Parts of them I really loved. I didn't care for them overall. I just kind of felt like they were more of a nuisance than anything. And so seeing the mechanics in these two extremes, extreme one being Valley Girmanda, or Valley Girl Amanda as I call Valley Girmanda, or Everkeep, I really think that they were just a lot better executed than what we've seen recently. Now, they were still not, like, super easy. I went through both of them, of course, on Black Mage. The first time I cleared them, I kind of struggled, and I was like, ooh, I don't know about this. I don't know if it's a Black Mage thing, or if it's the mechanics thing. But after practicing a bit, I really started getting an appreciation for the mechanics themselves, as well as the timing, and I started finding my flow with Black Mage. So it took me a little bit to get into a comfortable route. However, these fights were super easy to clear, which I think is fine as the first two extremes of the expansion. And the more I do them, they just feel more fun. Especially Valley Girmanda, I feel like, is a very choreographed kind of dance with a lot of the mechanics and variations. Everkeep, I think, is a little more tricky with the amount of movement you have to do, and some of the mechanics aren't as easy to read. Like, it kind of takes you, like, dying to the mechanic a handful of times at least to get them down perfectly. However, I do really appreciate the mechanics that we've seen so far. I think it is really good groundwork for what we're going to get in the future, and it makes me very hopeful for the normal raid and Savage raid content. Now, speaking of content too, one of the things that I really enjoyed this time around was the world boss fights. So I'd actually not planned to do the world boss fights right away. However, through doing some leveling, from doing some fate grinding, I kind of fell into like, oh, well, look, this is ready to spawn. Let's try it out. And I got through, within, I believe, the first week, I got through both of the world boss fights fully completed with the gear. They were fun. Truth be told, they were really fun. I especially love the one in Living Memory, the mascot murder, I think it is. A squirrel with a top hat and a coat and dancing on a ball. How can you not have fun? So it was just really cool and really fun to see these really kind of goofy fights be brought into it. I love serious fights, but I am also like a chaotic comedy type of person, so just seeing the goofiness that came with this was just so good. I feel like too, when you're doing harder content like that, like the harder normal content, it is really fun to have a fun theme, a less serious theme, because you need that kind of balance, right? You need that kind of balance between some like more serious content and hard fights, and then like the goofy shit that really keeps you invested in like community, big kind of like open world boss fights. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Was it stressful? Absolutely. Especially when you try to spawn or like God forbid you try to go to another world and they insta-pull without waiting for anybody. That was probably the worst part of it at the very beginning. Sometimes you would get to an area and they were super good. They would wait until 25 minutes. They would wait the, whatever it is, like the 5 minutes to let people come over so that everyone could get their stuff. Other groups would just insta-pull and you wouldn't get there in time. That was super stressful. However, I think that the system as it is kind of makes you more like wanting it more. So I'm very happy that the system is what it is. I do wish that there were some in-game timers. I know there are a lot of people who use third-party websites in order to try to time the world boss fates when they're going to spawn. I wish there was some more information like that in game, because I do prefer when we can do more things in game with in-game resources other than relying on these third-party sites to kind of like give us timers and ideas of when things are going to spawn. However, besides that, like, it was tough getting to these things. You know, it took multiple days of like either farming for a little bit or just tracking on Discord and waiting for people to shout in zones and stuff like that. But I think it's a really decent system right now because it's not easy, and that makes getting it just so much better. Like, it makes it feel like so much more rewarding. I was so happy when I got my capybara and then even more happiness was added to that when I got my squirrel head and then the squirrel outfit, and I love it. So it was very fun doing those content things. I know this coming Tuesday, we are going to get Arcadian Normal, and I am so excited for that as someone who raids in the game all the time, and I'm very hopeful from everything that I've seen with the live letters through everything that I've just seen in Dawntrail so far. That side of the content I am so excited for, and I think we are going to have a lot of really good raiding experiences and hopefully alliance raid experiences as well. And now I can't really think of anything else to talk about Dawntrail. I'm very much enjoying myself. I've logged in every single day. I am very excited to see what is to come in the story. I'm very excited to see what is to come in Arcadian, into the new Ultimates. Like, I'm still very hyped for the state of the game, the state of the expansion. I'm very happy with everything that has to come. Some happiness better than others, but overall, I think that this was a fairly solid expansion. If I had to give it a rating out of 10, I would give it an 8.5. For me, Endwalker, that was like a 9. You know, with Shadowbringers, like a 9.5. And I think like a good 8.5 is where I would put Dawntrail. It, to me, was a very good expansion as a whole. Now, of course, I don't think the story was super impactful in the sense of like the last 2 expansions. However, that's fine. We're starting potentially another 10-year arc, maybe shorter, maybe not. So I think for what we had to work with, it met my expectations, if not exceeded it. All of the quality of life adjustments really were great for me. I've had a really good experience with it so far, and I'm excited to see what is to come in the upcoming months, weeks, etc. as we get into some more content in Dawntrail. Now, thank you so much for watching my opinions and feedback on the newest expansion of Final Fantasy XIV. If you want to keep hanging out with me, check out all my links below. I'm a Final Fantasy XIV main content creator. I co-host a weekly news and updates podcast called This Week in Eorzea. I also do frequent news and updates related to everything Final Fantasy XIV, and I'm also a raider, as I've mentioned a few times before, and I stream Ultimate and Savage raids 3 times a week. You can find me everywhere all the time, so come hang out. We have a lot of fun, and without further ado, we will see you in game. Bye!